give me your 60-second biography.
My 60s, I've called West Michigan home my entire life. I was born here and raised here. And I cut my teeth here in journalism, my professional teeth in journalism as a newspaper reporter. And then I went to report for the Tampa Tribune. And I came back here and I was in business for quite some time, in the last 26 years for Universal Forest Products, headquartered here in Grand Rapids. And part of my career there was community service, which I loved very much. And when the opportunity came to run for the 73rd, I chose to do that because it was an extension of that love. So I did that, and I am now a state representative and honored every day that I go to Lansing and for the work that I'm able to do. I'm a mom. I have 2 children, and I live in Grand Rapids Township.
Okay. Second question. What to you right now is the single biggest issue facing the 3rd District?
Yeah. Well, it is now the COVID economy. And that's what I'm hearing at the doors and when I talk to constituents and would-be constituents. People are concerned about what this is going to look like next month, next year, what the jobs are going to look like, what school is going to look like, just what life is going to look like, and will they be able to get back on their feet? Will our economy be strong again? So I believe that is the number one issue that we have. I also believe that it's going to mean making some very tough decisions. I mean, limited resources are finite, even though sometimes we behave as if they're not. They are finite, and government can't continue to do everything that it has been doing in the way that it has been doing it and still handle all the expenses that COVID has created for us. So we're going to need people at the table who are just ready to make those tough decisions and to look at things and see where we can cut and see where we can say no, just like I do at the table. I've had to budget my whole life. I've got 2 kids, send them to college, and so we sit at the table, and when we get an unexpected expense, we have to say, well, you know what, we wanted to go on this vacation, but we can't, or we wanted to get this car, but we can't. Same thing in government.
Okay. When you hear the phrase Black Lives Matter, what do you think of?
I think of humanity. I think of respect for all of humanity. I'm so sad and so tired of the disrespect that we have oftentimes for each other and for life, and the way we talk to each other and the way we talk about these critical issues. Of course, it all goes back to the death of a man in a manner that should never have happened. It just should never have happened that way. The response to what happened to George Floyd did not honor his death and did not honor his life. And instead, we now have chaos in many of our communities. And I believe that we need to start restoring law and order to those communities in order to honor anybody's death and to move our communities forward in a manner that we want them to move forward. We can't let groups of people, small groups of people, bands of people, anarchists, if you would have it, rule the future of our communities. That's just not the way it happens. Communities are civil, and we need to behave in a civil manner and make decisions about the future of our communities together. And that means creating those conversations and those difficult conversations between races, between gender, between all the groups, so that we understand each other. And what it also means to me is that we really need to start listening. We are all often too focused on what we have to say and what we have to say about ourselves, instead of trying to be sympathetic and empathetic and listening to the other and learning and truly wanting to learn for the greater good.
Okay. 4th question. Do you believe police treat blacks and whites equally?
I believe that good police and good law enforcement do. I mean that's, and I have to believe that. And I believe that there are bad apples. And maybe that sounds contrived, but it's true. And it's true everywhere. And when that happens, we take care of, we isolate and take care of those issues or those people, and build on what's good. We don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. We don't take what's good about an institution and ruin it or dismantle it. We take care of those things that are bad. And I go back to the story of my father had a restaurant in downtown Grand Rapids in the 1960s, and it was a very popular restaurant. And in 1969, there were race riots, and my father's business was essentially ruined. I mean, he never came back. He had to move. He closed that down and had to move. Grand Rapids took decades to come back. And so, I mean, that's not what we want for this community or for any community. We don't want it to be destroyed in a manner that it takes a generation or two to bring it back. And we don't have to do that. We can bring law and order, and we can bring civility back to our communities.
Okay. A political reality, it's just a reality, is that congressional candidates like yourself are impacted by the top of the tickets, more so in the general than in a primary, but in primaries as well. They're impacted by the top of the tickets, especially in presidential election years like we're in right now. How closely do you align yourself with President Trump?
I believe that the president's policies have been strong. I believe that this president has gotten more done than most presidents that I can remember in a very short period of time, and in face of some incredible odds and headwinds. And so I support him. I support the efforts that he's done. I support, and I respect him, and I respect the office, and I you know, I think that he's done a remarkable job given what he's been dealt.
Okay. Next question. Would you vote for another direct aid COVID stimulus right now as Congress is currently debating one?
I think we have to be, I can't just say that absolutely, because we have to make sure that as we look at the stimulus packages, that they're disseminated in a manner that pays for only COVID related issues, that doesn't allow states that have had bad fiscal policy or have been irresponsible to benefit. So I think we have to be very careful about that. We have to be very careful about the way we identify who gets it, how they get it. So, you know, yes, we need to make sure that business in America stays strong, so that people can have jobs, they can feed their families, they can build their lives and build their dignity. And that's all important. So we need to make sure that we keep America strong, but we have to be very careful that we are not wasteful and that we are efficient with that which we give away.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
That's okay. Are masks necessary, and should they be mandatory in the fight against COVID-19?
I think that masks are. There are many instances when masks are necessary. When you're in close quarters, whenever you are, with groups of people and you're indoors, I think that, it's proven that people are safer in those situations. It's not as clear to me that they are necessary when people are outdoors and in less close quarters. So, I think that they're important to wear. I do not think that businesses should, be given, have to enforce all these rules themselves. I think this is a burden on business right now, frankly.
Okay. Justin Amash, person you're hoping to succeed, he still has a lot of supporters who may feel a little bit without a home right now. So
Yes.
What would you say to them to convince them that you're the best person to take his place?
Well, I have the broadest experience of any candidate in the race, in business, in community, and I've had the opportunity to dip my toes in the legislative waters. But also, I am interested in what they believe and in what they want and in what they know. And I'm interested in learning from them and in listening to them. We don't all think the same. We don't all believe the same things. We don't all have the same goals. But I'm not there to represent myself. I'm there to represent a broad, diverse group of people. And if I don't listen and learn from all of them, then I'm not being a representative. I will be a representative of them just as much as anybody else. Okay,
I do want to follow up real briefly on this one. Justin, no matter what people say about him in the Republican Party or out of, he was a low tax, pro-life, Second Amendment vote in Congress. Clearly, his issues with the president more than likely cost him his position. That said, his supporters aren't going to necessarily go flocking to a Democrat, but is all the criticism of him do you think going to hurt you trying to recruit them in a general if you win the primary?
No, I think that I will have the opportunity to show people who I am and how I operate. And I think that in doing that, I will show that I'm not there to represent me. I am there to represent as many people as well as I can and with as much information as I can. So it's not about me, even though, you know, I have the opportunity to run and the honor to run. This is about the people of the 3rd District, and everybody's included in that.
Okay. White House and President Trump currently pushing to zero out, cut all funding for COVID testing and tracing in the next relief bill. You're not in Congress yet, but this is an important issue. Would you support cutting funding for federal COVID testing and tracing?
You know, I haven't looked at that closely enough. I think that testing is very important. I think that we have to be careful about what we mandate. I think we have to be careful about how we trace and the information that we get and how we use it. So I would have to look at that a little more carefully. You know, I don't have an answer to everything. I believe that testing is important, but I think that it has to be disseminated or done in a manner that is useful and not invasive or intrusive.
Okay. One more question about Representative Amash. Aside from his opposition to the president, obviously voting for impeachment, what policy positions of his are you upset with that you do not share?
You know, mostly I'm upset with his style and with his belief about what representation is. Again, I believe that he had a constituency of 1 himself. And I just look at the role so very differently. And that has become even more and more clear to me as, you know, as I've been a representative only for, you know, a year and a half. But the interaction with, the regular contact with, the work for constituents is as much part of the job as defending the Constitution or anything else. And he doesn't look at the job in that way. So my biggest difference with him and my biggest, complaint about him would be the manner in which he conducted the job.
Okay. Second individual question for you. You've been attacked specifically by one of your opponents in particular about pledging not to raise taxes in the legislature and then voting to do so when you got to Lansing. Do you want to respond to that criticism at all right now?
Oh, sure, because I've not voted to raise taxes. I think they're pointing to what is called a Wayfair decision. What I did was we created law that was a tax parity issue, and it frankly saved Main Street, Michigan from the Amazons of the world and required them to collect the same tax that Main Street, Michigan has to collect. And the funny thing about this is that my opponent's family, Myers, and their trade association supported that and actually gave me Legislator of the Year award for that legislation itself.
Okay. Last question, and this one is all you. We've covered a lot in a short amount of time. I could honestly talk to you for 2 hours about all this. But what is one issue we haven't talked about that you care about and want to mention?
Oh, there are a number. I think immigration is important, not just because it's important to me, but because it's important to the people I talk to. And in fact, before COVID, I think that probably was one of maybe the top thing that I heard about most consistently. So, you know, I believe that we need to have secure borders. I believe that looks different in various places. I believe we need to be I'm the granddaughter of immigrants. All of my grandparents came here, and they built, you know, they worked hard and built lives and you know, sent their sons to war and their kids to school, and I'm just so grateful for the America that they left me. And I believe that we need to be welcoming. We need to be a welcoming nation to those who want to come here legally. We need to be a welcoming and caring nation for those who truly need asylum. And then we need to make sure that others who would come here to dismantle who and what we are as a nation, or who just disagree with you know, who we are and what as a nation, then you know, we need to weed them out. We need to keep them out. And you know, unless you want to be a participating part of this country who loves it for what it is, I'm not quite sure why you'd want to be here. So legal immigration, make sure that we have secure borders, and then we're going to have to address our immigration policies.